Hi, welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and holy crap, this is our 100th episode. My guest for this special Friday show is Daniel Warth, a filmmaker bringing his terrific feature debut Dim the Fluorescents to the Slamdance Film Festival this very weekend. It's a comedy drama starring Claire Armstrong and Naomi Squarna as industrial performers chasing their big break, and it has its world premiere at 9:30 p.m. Saturday, January 21st in the Gallery, with a second screening Tuesday, January 24th at 6 p.m. in the Ballroom. Why am I being so specific? Well, if you happen to be listening to this on a treadmill somewhere in Park City, take my advice and book a ticket. Daniel went for Love Streams, John Cassavetes' deeply emotional and deeply weird 1984 adaptation of Ted Allen's stage play about two adult siblings, Robert, played by Cassavetes himself, and Sarah, played by Cassavetes' wife, Jenna Rowlands, who live in constant states of chaos that only seem to abate when they're together. Made after Cassavetes was diagnosed with terminal cirrhosis, it's a film steeped in illness and melancholy and uncertainty, as well as Cassavetes and Rowlands' trademark eccentricity. And if you've never seen it, why are you still listening? Go get the Blu-ray and live in it for a night, because there's nothing else quite like it. Oh, one other thing. There was some construction happening outside the studio when we recorded this, so every now and then you might hear some machine noise or some shouting in the background. I've dropped it down as best I can, but if you find it distracting, just know that it'll stop in a few seconds. And actually, the chaos kind of supports the whole Cassavetes thesis. This is someone else's movie.
It almost wasn't my pick, and it was, my first thought was Days of Being Wild, because I love that movie, and I feel like people don't talk about it very much. But I was, I've never done something like this before, so I was trying to think of a movie that's very dense, so that we wouldn't run out of things to talk about.
Oh, nice.
And it's, I don't know, there's so much in that film that is very strange, and I feel like you can unpack just the first 20 minutes for a long time, so I thought it was safe.
Yeah.
To go with Love Streams.
It is, like, Cassavetes films historically bustle with life. I mean, there's stuff going on all the time. But with Love Streams, it does feel like he's crammed in every half-formed idea, every notion. There's stuff going on beyond the frame constantly. And yeah, that first reel is a whirlwind of activity that has almost no bearing on what comes next, except that it does. Everything informs us as to the personalities, even if it's not directly servicing the plot, I suppose.
Yeah, and the plot, such as it is, I mean, it's quite an erratic one, in a great way. I think, like, all of them do this, I think, but the feeling of form and content kind of being perfectly married really works for me in this film, like the way that it's bifurcated, and you don't even know their relationship until they're reunited.
Oh yeah, and even after that, it's another half hour.
It's another half hour before you know. Well, it's an hour before you know they know each other.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it's another half hour before you know how they know each other, right? And it kind of... there's all these things in the movie where someone decides to do something and then immediately regrets it and pulls out, right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes the structure so strange, is that she decides to go to Europe and then is like, oh, fuck this, and leaves and comes back. He does the same thing. He's so happy to see her, and then he's like, okay, let's go to Vegas. There's this kind of like, oh, I have a kid now, I should do something with a kid. No, I'm not going to. She brings all these amazing farm animals into the house, and then when she doesn't get the reaction she wants, she lets the ponies loose. There's just I think that's what makes the structure so strange, is stopping and starting rhythms of people doing something and then backing out of it.
Yeah.
But I think there's something really human and beautiful about that, and the way that informs the structure. I don't know, I like it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Cassavetes as a filmmaker was literally throwing himself into things over and over again. I watched the doc that...
Yeah, I'm almost not crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just such a great phrase.
Yeah.
Applied to him instead of applied to
her, yeah.
Sarah or Susan. He has these rhyming names and these bouncing... Sarah Lawson is Jenna Rowlands, and Susan is Diane Abbott. Yes.
Yeah.
And they are so casual with names. I mean, Cassavetes is introducing himself as Robert Harmon with his full name constantly.
Yeah.
And everybody else just sort of becomes this jumble of sound around him. And there's the clip in the doc where he's shooting the ballet sequence, one of the fantasy sequences, and says, like, I'm not the director, I'm just an actor, I don't know what's going to happen next. Except that he is the director.
Yeah, and this is an interesting thing I think about. So around the same time I saw that doc, and I saw the Robert Altman doc, Ron Mann's doc. Did you see that? Altman? Yeah. And both of them were kind of like, they're directors that I thought of, they kind of present themselves as giving a lot of control to actors, kind of throughout their careers. And it was funny because in both docs, all of the on-set footage seemed to suggest the opposite.
Right.
It seemed to suggest that he was very precise, and he was, sometimes in both cases, that they were writing dialogue on set, but they were still writing it and kind of insisting that people perform it in a certain way. There's a great thing in the Altman doc where he's on the football set of MASH,
right,
and he's saying, like, you say this, and then he turns his head, and you just see him micromanage, like when you see Wes Anderson on set or something. Like, it was almost that detailed. And it was just, there's something kind of revelatory about realizing, like, of course they have so much control. Of course they're, they feel spontaneous in some ways. They really are, both filmmakers, but they're not giving up control.
Yeah.
And you feel it.
And Cassavetes is doing it too there's a tennis court sequence in Love Streams that's captured in the documentary where he's doing the same thing.
He's writing the phone call.
Yeah, running through half of the dialogue, but only someone else's half.
Yeah.
Which is sort of incredible.
Yeah.
And also saying at one point how insane it is to watch people kick a ball around.
Yeah.
Which is true. I mean,
it's true. Yeah, you would never do those things with your body if not for the ball. Yeah, that's a really bizarre and beautiful observation. I don't know. That's just how his brain works, I guess.
And I'm in awe of that because, being a director is about noticing and capturing and framing. And being an actor is about not thinking of any of those things. And somehow he managed to do it in the service of his own film. And, of course, with Love Streams, it was after a diagnosis of cirrhosis that informs everything about the movie, but never explicitly figures in it. I mean, he's referring to throwing up in people's homes, and he looks like crap. He's got good days and bad days. It's very clear from his activity.
He looks unwell.
Yeah. And he's still... It's there, and I don't know if it's there because Robert Harmon is unwell or because Cassavetes can't keep it from leaking into his performance. And looking at him as a director, of course he could have if he wanted to. He could have just not done anything like that. But then instead, it's all there. Like, it's this organic, it's this... How can I explain this? This sounds so weird. Watching the movie this time, I found myself thinking about a movie I'd recently seen called The Creeping Garden about plasmoidal slime molds, which are these massive, basic organisms. They live under moss and grounds. There was an episode of The X-Files where it was swallowing people and making them hallucinate. They're not that complex.
Right.
But they are gargantuan, and no one knows what they do, but they do something. And that's what Cassavetes' illness feels like in Love Streams. It's there. It's always there underneath everything. It's in the film grain. But the movie is so much not about it, and it's so invested in life and in this constant flailing and staggering towards, if not happiness, then at least being one's best self. Because Harmon doesn't, he has this great long speech to his son about how he doesn't like men, he doesn't like women really.
Yeah.
He likes young kids, he likes kids and old people.
And you see it in the movie too, which is really fun. He kind of doesn't have time for people his own age.
Yeah, which would mean he doesn't have time for himself.
Yeah.
But he doesn't, but he does. But it's just this, everything in the film is this, it's a constant push-pull of, desire is the wrong word. I don't even know what it is. I don't know that they know what it is. But when Robert and Sarah are together, it stops being so much of a thing.
Yeah, so, there's peace a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not entirely.
Yes, they created.
I think it really only. They're not actually that unified for that long emotionally. Like, they kind of do have these little spurts where they have that beautiful slow dance by the jukebox, and then she mentions Susan called, and he recoils.
Yes.
And he tries to put her to bed like she's 6. I don't know if that's the same scene, but there's another scene where he's like, just go to bed. And she's like, I'm not tired. It's 9 p.m. But I think it's really when she starts to get worse that he seems to stop caring about everything else and really just want her to get better.
Yeah.
And then it's the same thing. He calls the doctor and then immediately banishes the doctor. I'm not entirely sure why, except I guess he wants to try and fix the problem themselves. They believe they can get through it just by loving each other and supporting each other. Mm-hmm. And then basically she leaves right after that. I was reading the Dennis Lim essay that's in that, and he mentioned something that I hadn't thought about, which is that both his character and Jenna's character, they collapse and then people love them more after. It's something I hadn't really thought about, but it kind of happens with her in the bowling alley. Mm-hmm. And it happens to her when she has her big episode with the doctor where all of a sudden he's so invested in her and her well-being. Yeah. It's a strange motif. I'm not sure that I totally understand what's going on there.
I don't even know if the movie knows it's a motif.
Or with Susan as well, right? Yeah. He collapses down. That's one of the most bewildering cuts to me, is when he's drunk driving and he falls down and his head is bleeding and he tries to adjust himself with his handkerchief and then he collapses, and the whole time she's just like rolling her eyes. Yeah. The next morning it cuts to her by that window and she looks completely in love with him. Yeah. It's so mystifying.
Yeah, there's that, and there's the other moment where what is it? It's the scene where Albie has his total breakdown about just wanting to go home, and Harmon refuses to apologize.
Yeah.
I told you I was going to.
Didn't I say that? Yeah.
Yeah. To an 8-year-old, which is not something you can do with an 8-year-old.
And it's still kind of a terrible thing he said he was going to do in the first night. Leave him in the hotel.
And everything that follows is miserable for Albie. He takes him home and the door won't open, so Albie harms himself inexplicably.
In a similar way.
Yeah.
He's got the similar bleeding head.
And after that echo, there's still the scene where he chases his father down and says, I love you, don't leave.
Yeah.
It's the constant need of the supporting characters for these characters, which I think is the same way the movie sees them. It can't, like, it has to be about John Cassavetes and Jenna Rowlands because they're the ones making the movie, but at the same time, the movie seems to know, the film, the direction, the script, they're not people you want to be around for very long, so they're constantly making parties to get people to come close to them.
Yeah.
Cassavetes, the actor, the director, is paying this crew to be around him.
Yeah.
But Harmon is paying his girls to be in the house with him.
Yeah.
He's writing checks to them. Mm-hmm. And it's never further defined. We never really find out what it is.
No, because again, I think the structure of the movie kind of mirrors the way that characters process their lives. So I feel like he doesn't give them a lot of thought, except when he's asking them questions about,
about
whatever.
The weirdest possible
about
things.
The weirdest things, but it presumably informing his writing or his understanding of people or women or something. I don't know. But because whatever his arrangement is, I feel like is not high on his priority list. You don't fully understand it because he's never mentally that focused on it, and I think that's just an interesting structural choice. Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know what he's asking them.
and or for what purpose or to what end. There's the I'm almost not crazy is a great line for Sarah because it's relieved and she's saying it as a sort of a happy kind of affirmation. Mm-hmm. She's almost there.
Yeah, I've got good news.
I'm almost crazy. Yeah.
But after the luggage, which is the craziest.
Yes, we have just watched her carry 2 cab loads of luggage back and forth to Paris
and England,
and then back through London.
Yeah, and that sequence also just is so amazing, and it. Again, going back to like the idea of what people think of Cassavetes as doing or not doing, there's so many things in this film that are strange in the context of his body of work. Yeah. I feel like the opera sequence is high up there.
Yeah, he was never big on fantasy.
Yeah, but there's dream sequences and other hallucinatory sequences and
that weird dream of the car accident, which is an accident. She kills her own ex.
Yeah. That's a really strange one. And the slow motion of the car going over, that shot feels kind of out of character.
Yeah. Well, you can't think of many stunts in John Cassavetes.
Yeah, films. Like I guess Gloria has some, but yeah.
Oh, that's true. And Seymour Cassel jumps off the roof in, I think it's in Fences. which Cassavetes had him do a number of times,
right,
just to see if he could land better.
Yeah,
that's how he explained it. It's like the camera's not catching him landing.
Yeah,
but I want to see if you can land better. That was their relationship.
Right. Yeah, it's funny to feel that, like, the not direct references to his other work, because I guess I don't know if he would want to do that, but maybe without realizing it, maybe his illness, something he feels like he's doing, I don't know, summing up something.
There's a valedictory quality. There definitely feels like that's happening, and there, some of the impulsive decisions that Sarah makes feel like they're right out of Mabel Lungetti's life, or maybe something else. From Minnie and Moskowitz.
It's like seeing Minnie and Moskowitz get divorced.
There is that too.
Yeah, like just by nature of the casting, right? And it being in Cassavetes' house as well, like their house that's been in a couple of the films too. I guess I just can't help but evoke all the other ones.
That's a conversation I wish someone had with him about. When you and I suppose the same could have been asked of Wells and people who, and I guess Henry Jaglom shoots stuff in his own place, and Woody Allen did it with, I think it's Hannah and Her Sisters is mostly filmed in.
I didn't realize that. Yeah, I did that too. I don't recommend it. But anyway.
I was gonna say it can't be easy. No. It must be incredibly disruptive.
It's a nightmare, and it's hard to watch your film after, and not for me anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know how those guys feel about it, but it's hard to watch it and not think about that.
Joss Whedon did it with Much Ado About Nothing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he said that it was, he found gaffer tape and gaffers sometimes just in rooms that they shouldn't have been in, because you have to open your entire space to people.
Yes.
And it's like having a party that never ends and that you can't, you're already pretty tired of.
Yeah. That's 14 hours a day. Or
Yeah.
I don't personally recommend it. I have much better party ideas than that. Yeah. But that's, I guess that helps it feel personal. It's also, this is a maybe superficial thing, but it's so, if you shoot in your house, I guess you can plan the shooting all the time.
Right.
If you know a space so well, and I feel like I've fallen into this a lot, where like if I'm writing a high school thing, I picture my high school, because I can imagine, that kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe it's, especially with him, with the films being so personal, with it being them who live there, maybe the planning never stops. I don't know.
I mean, certainly, how do you react? How do you act arriving in a home that you live in?
Yeah.
How do you be a new person in a space?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I guess in this one, it's hard to know. I mean, I find the casting choice so interesting, because it's a platonic relationship between the two of them.
Yeah. That
is the only kind of real, meaningful relationship in his character's life. That is obviously his wife. Yeah. I'm not sure what that means, or...
Yeah, and on stage, apparently, there was more of a... I think Lim mentions it in the essay. There was more of an incestuous vibe between the two of them. They were definitely more dependent on one another than they are in this film.
Yeah. There is this very goofy stuff, in a way. Like, I think not Broad, but the closest to Broad that he got, that I've seen anyway.
Cassavetes,
Yeah, in those kind of slapstick almost sequences with the luggage. And she's yelling at the French guy in English with a French accent, hoping he'll understand.
Or Spanish. She
says muchos bago. Yeah. Listen to me. That's how she's going to communicate. Yeah. I don't know. It's very funny, but it still has that frantic, desperate, emotional quality to it, but it's goofy. And all this stuff, there's this running motif as well of kind of nonplussed taxi drivers. Who just do whatever
and
people
they're waiting constantly.
Or lifting the luggage to the second floor.
That's right.
So they keep going. There's this running, it feels like a running gag, where they keep their conversation is happening in the foreground, John and Jenna, and then two taxi drivers will come by with something huge again. Or with all the farm animals as well.
That's right.
He's trying to move the goat through the space.
Yeah, and I noticed that for this time, the Criterion disc has enough clarity.
Yeah.
That you can see that there are two guys, probably grips or stagehands, holding the animals on the other side of the cab against what looks like a wall or ivy or something.
Yeah.
Trying really hard not to be noticed.
Yeah.
What was the first time? What was your first experience of it?
Of Love Streams?
Yeah, when did you first see it?
I saw it on a plane but it wasn't on the plane wasn't offering that.
I would think.
Yeah, so this was before it got re-released. It was a pretty crummy version of it, and I watched it on a laptop on a plane.
So this is probably the VHS version that got out.
Maybe, yeah. Because I think somebody burned a DVD of the VHS, which is always a good move for clarity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've definitely squinted, and there's just the room tone of a plane.
Yeah.
in the background, but I was incredibly moved by it and taken with it, despite the circumstances. It's kind of intense for a plane. Yeah, I don't know. That's how I saw it, but I knew it had been on my list for a long time. When did you first see it?
I think I saw. I mean, I know I saw it theatrically. I don't remember when. It was in the late '80s, maybe.
Yeah.
Either at the Bloor or maybe the Paradise, one of the rep theaters in Toronto. I was already on a Cassavetes kick before the. I don't know if you heard the Woman Under the Influence episode that we did with
no, I haven't.
It's really good. First of all, she was terrific.
Yeah, I believe
it's a perfect choice.
Yeah.
And in '92, I lucked into a press junket to Los Angeles. It was my first trip to LA in the summer of '92. I went to the AFI because Disney had acquired the rights to the Castle Hill films, the 5 movies, Faces, Shadows, Opening Night, Chinese Bookie, and Woman Under the Influence. And was releasing them on VHS and Laserdisc for the first time.
Right.
So they sent me a videotape of A Woman Under the Influence, and the next day I was on a plane to Los Angeles, and we were 4 journalists. I think there was someone from the Times, maybe someone from the Sun-Times, and then me and the guy from Tower Records' in-house magazine, Pulse. And we were divided into 2 round tables of 2 people each, with one table was Jenna Rollins and Peter Falk, and the other table, was Al Rabin and Seymour Cassel. And we got, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes with each of them, because this was 1992 and nobody else was there, and it was the best day of my life. It was fantastic. It was just fantastic. And the experience of talking to, just Al Rabin had all these amazing stories. He was the producer. He shot Opening Night. Yeah. He appears in it briefly. He's the unit production manager for at least 2/3 of the thing. And he and Cassavetes had worked together all along on their own productions. And he had stories about the fluid nature of direction and improvisational approach and the energy that Cassavetes would bring. And then Seymour Cassel would interrupt him by telling the story about jumping off the roof and fences. Yeah. And it's like, I'd break my fucking knees for you, John. Like, you would. You see that level of commitment that he brought out in everybody he worked with. And this is the thing that's unthinkable to me. He died in '89. This is only 3 years after his death. So it must have been incredibly raw for everyone too.
Yeah.
And Rollins was just effusive, ebullient, just amazing. This life force. I've had the good fortune to meet her a couple more times and interview her properly, and also just be at a dinner with her once. And she is incredible. And she is the person that she is in Love Streams, in that she can, of course, hold herself together and conduct herself like a person. Yeah. But she'll just get excited and start sputtering ideas when she's really engaged in conversation. And it was just amazing to watch that part of her that I'd seen on screen come out of this regal, poised, intelligent woman who is also just over the moon about art and wants to talk about the things that she did. Yeah. The scene in Love Streams where she meets Jim the dog for the first time, and she is unable to keep her terror down. Yeah. Jenna Rollins has no problem with dogs. Yeah. She's faking it. That's a performance, and it's so good. It's so real
and funny too.
Yeah.
Whoa! Like her quick recoiling,
exaggerating.
Yeah, it's very funny. That's Jim the dog. We should talk about at some point.
Jim the dog is he's introduced early on as a human being.
Yeah, if you give him love, and he will reveal himself to be a wonderful human being or something. And he certainly does.
Kind of happens.
It reminded me a little bit, this is a strange comparison maybe, but do you know the Kids in the Hall sketch? The night I connected with my dog?
Oh, yes, the terrier, yeah.
Yeah. It felt a little bit like that. That's the night that Robert Harmon connected with his dog. Yeah.
And everything is falling apart.
I've had that experience. You're a dog owner as well.
Yeah.
When you're like, you realize that it's just another person.
When you get each other.
Yeah. You're like, I care about this guy.
Yeah.
'Cause I have a dog as well. That is one of the most beautiful representations of that I've seen, in addition to being, again, very strange and funny.
Yeah.
The pace at which it's revealed.
Yeah, it's true. It is. It's just this really weird, dry joke in the film.
Yeah, and he's hacking, coughing, laughing for a long time before we even know. Just saying, "Who the fuck are you?"
Yeah.
It's very funny. Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
I heard. I think this is also in the Lim essay, but that guy played the dog on stage. Is that right?
Oh, that would make sense.
In a way. I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong. Because that's a dream I had.
How would you do it now? Like, what would you? There's no room in Love Streams for magic realism, except that it absolutely belongs there when it happens.
There's so much magic in it.
Yeah.
Like there's so much strangeness and I don't know. Things work out. Things don't work out. But things, I don't know. There's a poetic logic to things, and things are convenient in a way that's narratively satisfying, even though the narrative is so, as we said, kind of erratic. But yeah,
it's emotionally satisfying even when it is completely unbelievable.
You don't know what the hell's going on, right? And I've found myself every time rooting for her and the guy from the bowling alley.
Oh yeah,
to be happy together. But and I always feel that this is beautiful, but there's no reason, because she says she's going to go back to Seymour Cassell's character to her marriage that has not asked her to return.
Right, and in fact is repeatedly saying, we're not married anymore.
That's what I want you to take after the kid, look after the kid, but that's it.
Kind of articulates there is that same thing about reaching out and pulling back.
Yeah.
It does kind of say at one point, "I would like you to come home."
But he clarifies.
And immediately.
Yeah. Not because of me.
It sounds like it's desperate. It sounds like he's sad, and then he suddenly has to explain, "Oh, but this isn't... No.
Yeah.
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 It's such a strange, naked, emotional place to find yourself, where all you want is to be understood, and you can't understand yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody except Jim has that moment in this film. Jim is himself, absolutely.
Jim stays Jim.
But yeah, Roger Ebert's review is all about how everything that you see and do, everything you see and hear in the film is a cry for help.
Yeah.
That no one else can hear.
Yeah.
And showing up with the animals is only funny if you don't know her.
Yeah.
And by the time it happens in the movie, we have an understanding of these people, and there is no possible way this is going to work out.
Yeah.
I mean, her whole impulse about getting the animals starts with, "I'm going to buy you a baby," which is not a sentence a person should utter to anyone.
It's a little alarming when she first...
And he rolls with it because he loves her, and
his response is very measured. Yeah. It's very you don't have to do that. Yeah. And even to the animals, he's kind of you can tell he's not thrilled, but he's not. Same as the taxi driver. He's not what the hell is going on? Yeah. Nobody ever really does that in a way, and I love how quickly he gets on board, especially at the end during the storm. He's kind of I've taken care of the animals. Right. This goat is impossible. he's just I don't know. He accepts them.
It's funny that line. I'm almost not crazy. Is maybe the key, but I think the other one is the thing that he says early on to his secretary / partner / enabler, whoever that woman is supposed to be to him. He says, "Don't try to organize me."
Yeah.
And that's Love Streams in a nutshell. Just not only the larger metaphor that people keep coming back to about what love is and how it is this intertwining, you can't dam a river, really. The water has to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. And the idea of organizing the emotional flow of this movie is self-defeating. Yeah. It's going to go wherever it goes.
Yeah.
And that rain at the end is part of it, right? There's that incredible torrent of whatever is happening in their world externalized.
It definitely feels like it, right? And it feels like her decision to go back and try to make love work.
Yeah.
Even
though she's the only one who has it.
Yeah, it can't be separated from the fact that she's heading off into a storm, and his decision to remain kind of cool to all the relationships in his life. It does seem like that's represented with Shelter a little bit in that sequence. And then, the end of the movie is literally just him waving goodbye at you. It's really amazing from inside the shelter while the storm is out there.
It's heartbreaking. Like, it really is. I think it means he's happy. I think it means it's okay. Like, I want to take that away because as far as he knew, this was the last movie he was going to make.
It feels like it, right? Yeah, that ending.
I mean, the next movie he did make was one that, Big Trouble, nobody really owns, and he only took it over as a favor.
Own it.
Yeah. He washed his hands of it while it was in post, I think.
Yeah.
But if this is his sign-off, like, it's quiet. It's calm with that storm. He's still okay with it. Like, this is fine. I've done what I've done. Yeah. And it's weird and heartbreaking and encouraging, and I had this bizarre existential moment. I even tweeted about it, where I was just thinking about how old they must have been at the time, and I got the years wrong. And for a second, I'm 48. I thought, well, if they were in their mid-40s, how is it possible that they've lived this much and felt this much and know this much about humanity? And I'm still, yay, Star Wars movie. It's pretty good. But how is that even a thing? Like, that level of emotion. And someone else pointed out it was a darker, harder world to grow up in, I think, and my generation's had it relatively easy. And then I realized I was wrong. I was 10 years off. They were actually in their mid-50s. But I'm 48. So it's still a matter of 5 or 6 years. It's surreal to imagine these people having this much, just the sheer feeling, the sheer intuition. Like, these are people who were always artists all the time. And it just feels so strange and poetic and heartfelt for a piece of American cinema in the 70s to be as precise and as exacting about emotional relationships as this is, even though all that other stuff was going on, like all the new American cinema was happening and had happened. But Love Streams feels different to me. Like, it stands out in a way, like in 1984, that this could happen. And even then I was just getting the years wrong again. Vietnam was long since over. But they lived through all of that, and these characters don't have any...
But even the earlier films that would have been happening during that period.
Yeah, well, stuff like Women Under the Influence.
Yeah, and even Faces. Like, Faces is pretty mature, and it seems like they've seen some shit.
Well, Shadows, I mean...
Shadows, too, yeah.
That was... 50... He was late 50s. He was barely 30 years old when he did that. He's always been that good, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
He's always been that good,
which is stunning. And then to see this last one... that does seem to sum everything up. And feel it so profoundly. And, the answer is he doesn't have the answer. Which is so weird to try to state like an artistic statement. You make this movie for 2 hours and 20 minutes where people are just fucking up. Constantly. But they're okay with each other. Like, that's the thing I come back to, is that the relationship between the two of them is never really in doubt. There's nothing either of them can do to drive the other away.
Yeah, and maybe there's some peace at the end that comes from accepting what you can and can't change about people. Like, because I feel like she does try and get him to be more open with other people in his life. And I don't know, and he also wants to stop her from going back to this marriage that is in fact over. Right. But there's this kind of like, oh, if that's what you're doing, good luck, kind of.
And they'll support each other through all of it.
Yeah, and there's a feeling of, at the end, like you said, a feeling of like, well, this is what people are like, this is what life is like, I don't have the answers. And then literally waving bye.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's really it's one of the great... if you view it as his final film, like a lot of people do, and I think he would prefer, that is one of the great endings to a final film. That I know of.
It's incredible. I guess that's the thing that stuns me every time, is that he knew it was a movie. Like, he knew this was going to work as cinema, because it really doesn't even have the rhythms of his other films. It just doesn't have it sort of has a 3-act structure, but it doesn't have a narrative drive. It just goes places.
Yeah, that structure is very strange, and I think, again, like, it's that weirdness of the structure is, yeah, like I said, I think really in harmony with what's going on. And a great example of that too is the entrance of his son.
Yeah.
Which is a classic kind of trope of self-improvement, right? You're a...
How many movies have we seen?
Yeah, you're a crazy bachelor, ladies' man, but then your son turns up.
Yeah, here's a fully formed 8-year-old.
Yeah, and you've got to grow up to be the parent he needs. Well, no. I'm going to Vegas.
The first thing he does is ask him if he wants a beer.
Yeah, he promises him breakfast and only delivers the beer, I believe.
That's
and those scenes are heartbreaking, almost in like, just watching the kid rush to clean up. He's so eagerly like picking up ashtrays and playing with matches, literally playing with matches, lighting cigarettes. It's horrible. Yeah, it's kind of, and there's something I love when films or books or plays or whatever do this, where they subvert your narrative expectations to kind of reveal something about people that's different than the way art has kind of conditioned you to think about them. I thought recently, did you see Manchester by the Sea?
Yeah.
Kind of a similar thing.
It comes
where
up
there's
a couple
trope,
of times, right?
He's got to raise this kid, and I don't want to spoil Manchester by the Sea or anything, but
that's one of the things that a character is faced with.
Yeah, and it's sort of, your expectations for that are not met, and in a lot of cases with that film about how people are supposed to act in certain situations.
It's funny. Lonergan came up a couple of times watching this.
Yeah.
Just not only is the relationship between Robert and Sarah kind of an echo of Laura Linney and Mark Ruffalo's characters in You Can Count on Me, where they're just, no matter what, they're a complete disaster. Well, he is, and she is trying not to be.
Yeah.
But they're there for each other constantly and fully.
Mm-hmm.
There's that. There's the sort of lost kid stuff in there as well.
Yeah.
These children are just sort of drifting away from a sane parent.
Yeah, and Lonergan's very good at, in the plays and in the movies, at making you care about everyone equally.
Yeah.
Everybody, kind of a Renoirian approach to like making you understand where everybody's coming from and making you love selfish people.
Mm-hmm.
And understand them like they're your kids or something. Like you can see where they're coming from. And I feel like that in Love Streams, because neither one of them, their characters, should have a child, probably.
That's true. It would be better.
Or pets, really. Like, I'm a little nervous.
Even a goat.
Yeah, even a goat is impossible. But, there's something... You want her to be reunited with her family, but when you actually hear about it, it sounds kind of horrible. Like, she's doing this peculiar Patch Adams type thing where she's entertaining the sick. The first time you hear about it in that courtroom scene, it's like she just says in an offhand way, "I won't take you to as many funerals," or something, and you're going, "What?"
Yeah, that can't be. That's a metaphor.
Yeah, you're like, "What does she do?" Like for a second, right? And so you don't. The fact that she insists on her daughter being at the divorce hearing is incredibly strange.
Yeah,
whether it's leverage with her ex-husband or something, I don't know, but it feels very selfish and like it would be destructive to the kid. I noticed he does this a lot with both her daughter and his son, where the camera just moves away from the action and just focuses on how it's affecting the child in a really great visual way.
Yeah, you can watch damage happening in real time.
Yeah, when she collapses outside the hearing and her daughter rushes to her, it kind of just moves back up, and seeing the daughter process. They do that a lot with his son as well. Mm-hmm. I noticed something the last time I watched it. He likes to separate people visually a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of singles.
Yeah, there's a kitchen table shot that really struck me this time where it's just Roland's.
Yeah, it's
and
that
his
one.
hand creeps in every now and then.
Yeah,
it's the one on the cover.
It's the one on the cover, yeah. And there's a similar kind of echo of it in the courtroom hearing, I noticed. I hadn't noticed that similarity before. But Seymour Cassell's hand holds the daughter's hand, and it's the same thing, it's just an arm.
Yeah.
There's something, I'm sure, to be made of that, the fact that people are going through these things separately but together. It has
to be deliberate. You can't. That's an accident you don't keep. If you
I mean, certainly those compositions are no accident. I'm of the belief that he didn't make a lot of mistakes. But
Al Raban had me feeling like there was a great deal of luck.
Yeah.
When he was talking about shooting stuff and working with him, that they would find something and fix on it.
Yeah, there's some of the best lens flares in that movie. Yeah, with Susan's mom dancing, and it kind of does. I guess they do this kind of thing in opening night too, a bit, where the lights are over her head and kind of blowing out,
just in the audience's eyes almost.
Yeah, and he very amazing luck with these, or not luck, I don't know, but with these almost Punch Drunk Love-ish, like those big blue lens flares that happen just on a window, and you can't really figure out how that's happening, what's causing just a blue bar in the middle of the frame, but it's very beautiful and strange looking. Yeah, he's very good, Al Rabin. He doesn't get enough
it's true.
credit even though I think a lot of people consciously emulate the style of Cassavetes' movies. He's somebody that I don't hear many people talk about.
Yeah, I think he's still around. I hope he's still around.
I hope he's still around.
Yeah. So the wrap question on the show is always the same, which is, what of love streams or Cassavetes' work in general, I suppose in this case, have you absorbed or stolen or incorporated into your creative DNA? Like, how has the film turned up in your work?
I guess it's again going back to what we were talking about before. Maybe that stuff will be more apparent to other people. Like, I definitely know some things I stole. Mm-hmm. If anything, I think there is a intuitive way that he structures things and shapes things that I believe has kind of liberated me a little bit to think, okay, I can have someone start something and stop in the movie, and that's okay.
Right.
I don't have to. Not everything has to pay off in a conventionally satisfying way if it feels emotionally satisfying. I think, and not shying away from messiness, visually or narratively or thematically. I think stylistically I haven't done something that looks like his films, I don't think, but
Is that interesting to you? I mean, would you want to? 'Cause your films are very... of what I've seen of them and of Dim the Fluorescents, there's a sort of a... To describe them as linear is not the right word, but there's definitely a composed, formal feel to them that I don't think of when I think of John Cassavetes. Mm-hmm. Like, there's not a lot of handheld, there's not a lot of...
Yeah.
Everything seems to be in its place. Like,
right.
Things are where they need to be.
Yeah.
In your stuff.
I think I've come at things from a sort of Truffaut Hitchcock approach. Mm-hmm. That was kind of, a big part of my film school.
Right.
Not literally, but figuratively.
Right.
And I definitely designed things as sequences in my brain. I've also only ever worked on movies that had no money. Okay. So spontaneity always finds a way in, regardless. You don't actually get to be Alfred Hitchcock level of control when you have no money. So I always tried to control as much as I could and let those other things interfere anyway, and they always do. But if it's not apparent to you, then that's okay. That's my secret. But I think it's always just based on the project. However, I think something should be. I don't know. I don't have any like strong adherence to a movement or anything. I think Cassavetes, however he gets there, and as I said, I'm not entirely... I've read a lot of interviews with him. I've seen some of this stuff on set and heard other people talk about it. I'm still not entirely sure what his process is for actually visualizing a movie, because I think the way that he structures things visually is perfect too. Whether he arrives at it organically or with a lot of prep or a bit of both, or it depends on the sequence, is hard for me to know. But I think the goal is just, in both cases, is to just maximize whatever you're doing, the impact of whatever you're doing on a cinematic level. Right. And I think our methods might have been different. I don't really know what his are, but I love his films. If I did something that legitimately reminded somebody of him, I would be very flattered. There's definitely no desire for me not to do something like his work. Yeah.
Well, maybe you just throw a goat in the next movie. Let people find it.
They're hard to wrangle. The movie has taught me.
I can see that.
Yeah.
My thanks to Daniel Warth, whose debut feature Dim the Fluorescents makes its world premiere this Saturday, January 21st, at the Slamdance Film Festival, repeating on Tuesday, January 24th. If you're in Park City and you happen to be listening to this, you should check it out. It's really good. You can find Daniel on Twitter at Mr. Daniel Warth, all one word, and Mr. is just Mr. And you can find Love Streams on Blu-ray and DVD in the Criterion Collection in a typically terrific special edition. It's also available on iTunes and Google Play. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you want to leave a review up on iTunes, that would be very kind of you. Maybe you want to mention the 100 episodes thing? I think it's kind of amazing. Thanks for listening.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.